of the Reinventor Lab and panelists to discuss the topic of leveraging technology for environmental and social impact. Give it up for Jen.
Thank you. Great. All right. I promise it's not going to be just me. I have some fantastic colleagues who will be coming and joining us. And as she mentioned, we are going to be talking about the use of technology. The actual name of the panel is Leveraging Technology for Environmental and Social Impact. We have Dr. Kyle Hodebeck who will be joining us, and Evan Blumenthal. And if Adora, you're here, we'd love for you to come and join us. Great. And Logan, if you're here, great. Logan, were you able to get a microphone? Oh, why don't you go ahead and step in back and grab the mic and then you will. Wonderful. Welcome, Adora. Great. I'm going to move over just because we'll be bookended by two of these.
Where are you going here?
Right here. It'll be lovely. Great. So, in the ever-changing landscape and the quickly, and how everything is changing so quickly now with AI, machine learning, all of these challenges around AI, I think one of the big conversations we're having now, just publicly, and around privacy, around integrity, around all of these things. And so, where does the environmental and social impact element of this come in? Because certainly we're trying to drive sales and certainly trying to improve products and services. What does it look like when we're driving so fast on this track towards increasing efficiency, and we might be losing the human element and the environmental element as a result. And so we're going to be exploring some of these questions in our session. I'm going to have each one of us introduce ourselves for about 1 or 2 minutes to talk about what we do, and then I'll ask some general questions to the panel, and they'll answer based on their perspective and their experience. So my name is Gemma Bullos. I am the CEO and founder of the Reinventor Lab. What we do is we work with company teams and improve their cultures for decision making around how to make informed decisions, how to make decisions that are going to be, they can still take risks, but not feel so unprotected. I work with teams to build that culture so that they're able to have a sense of inclusion and belonging in their teams so that they can move forward effectively. So to my left, I'm going to introduce Evan. And Evan, if you want to tell us a little bit more about what you do and why you're here at the conference.
Sure, thank you. Evan Blumenthal. I am a professional EOS implementer with EOS Worldwide, also the founder and CEO of EJB Global LLC. And I started my entrepreneurial journey inverse of most entrepreneurs. I started at the Fortune 1, working at Walmart. And then I went to a family business, small to medium-sized business, and then I started my own company. And so it's kind of inverted from the way that many people kind of start a company, they bring some family and friends together, hopefully to get to that unicorn status, have some exits, and go from there. So I swim upstream, I do things the other way. But what I found throughout my career is that I am energized by helping actualize potential. And sometimes that's leveraging technology to be able to help people or processes do that. I saw firsthand and learned in my 4 years at Walmart how much of an impact you can make when technology allows processes and efficiencies to be present, like as just the natural order of things. But I also saw how when it's missing, there's opportunities in, for example, in my family business, there was opportunities for operational efficiencies. And so then, kind of transitioning to this role as a coach and a facilitator and a teacher to entrepreneurs and working with executive leadership teams today, it's really about helping them gain clarity on where they're going, how they're going to get there, instill discipline and accountability, and work together as a healthy cohesive team together. So, just in a nutshell, that will remind me.
Can you, I'm not sure if everyone in the room know what EOS stands for?
It stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. So it's not a technology, it's a people operating system. It's a way of harnessing human energy. So if you think about it, it's a way of harnessing the human energy in one's business so that no matter how many people you have in your business, we're all rowing in one direction, helping you accomplish whatever it is that you set out for.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Thanks, happy to be here.
Kyle.
Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Kyle Hodebeck. Started my journey at West Point in the military, went on to medical school, got my board certification in family medicine. It's been my first 17 years as a physician leader in the U.S. Army, culminating my last 3 years being recognized by the Surgeon General as the U.S. Army Physician of the Year. Finished up my time in the military, transitioned to an area that I knew nothing about in the health insurance space. Just for perspective on the Army side, if you order something, it's taken care of, so you don't have to worry about insurance. And of course, I hopped in something I knew nothing about. So, went in as the first medical director of utilization management at a small startup called Oscar Health out of New York City on the health tech, health insurance side. Helped grow them nationally. They went public a couple years ago. Since then, I'm wearing 3 hats now. So I went on to my next startup, which is called Juna Health, a online wellness platform, cash pay. Other hat is been doing pretty well on the startup side, so I started a health tech venture capital firm, which I'm a partner at, and then I do healthcare advising. A little bit about me.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle. And Adora.
Hi.
Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Can you hear her okay? Okay.
Okay. Hi everyone. So my name is Adora, right? I've been in tech all my career. I am a software engineer primarily. But apart from my full-time job I'm a software engineer. I do things with the cloud, so thinking, building distributed systems, scaling those systems, monitoring those systems. So the entire stuff end to end from being a software engineer to being a cloud engineer to doing all the DevOps and SRE things is kind of like where I sit. So I typically sit in between the backend and the cloud. And that's my full-time job, that's my real job. But I like teaching, I like to help people, I like, all those things. I am a cloud engineering author. I have 3 books on cloud engineering, and I speak all around the world about like cloud engineering and systems and how you build systems at scale and how you build systems that are resilient. And I also have, I'm also the founder of a non-profit called NexaSkill. And what we do there is provide simulated work experience to entry-level people, because we found that it's very crazy for people coming into tech because they need experience to get a job, but then you also need a job to get experience. So that's kind of like a chicken and egg situation. Where do you start from? So the goal, what NexaSkill actually does is to connect people to projects that they build, companies where they work for as apprentices, sort of like shadow real full-time employees, and they gain work experience from doing those things, and they can now take those things into interviews and get jobs. So that's like the second thing that I do. So I'm a software engineer and the founder of NexaSkill, which is the non-profit I just spoke about.
Great, thank you, Adora. And Logan, do you have a microphone? You go. Great, you're great. Wonderful.
So my name is Logan Fumakola. I'm the founder and CEO of Ecosystem, also known as ESD. My technological journey originally began when I was about 12. I started building computers. I found a lot of fascination over blocking them, tuning them, volt modding them, you name it. I really got into it a lot. I also got to work for Medtronic on a temporary and as-needed basis when I was 16. So that really engaged me on like a humanitarian side on how to actually help people and use technology to do so. So a bit later on, I actually founded a company, of course, and we're looking more so doing renewable energy projects to help with generating power. We actually have like 1.72 megawatts per hour as possible in certain conditions per unit. So driving innovation, driving positive change in certain sectors is definitely my company's focus, as well as my personal focus as well.
Thank you so much.
course.
Great. I'm so excited to be on this panel because we have expertise, across the spectrum. We've got operations, we've got venture, we've got health, we've got cloud, we've got software, hardware. Everyone here has some sort of investment and devotion and commitment to the improvement of social and environmental impact. So I don't necessarily have a background in tech, but I found myself on this panel because my background, I didn't say that much about it earlier, is that I started 3 social enterprises in 3 continents. 2 of them were one in sub-Saharan Africa and one in Asia. And it was about training women in rural communities to be able to build water and sanitation technologies and improve the health of their communities. Technology has always been a really important part of upskilling communities in the global south, but they're often thought of as just the hardware. But what we don't really think about is the software. How do we, one, provide access to the cloud, to information, so that they can collect data? There's so much rich data out there that has not been collected because of the lack of access to these technologies. So that's why I was really interested in actually moderating this conversation, because there's so many different ways in which our panel is approaching it. And I wanted to ask just a general question across the board. So in terms of your work, operations, venture, health, cloud, hardware, software, where is it that you think we are doing really well as in tech to support social and environmental impact, and where do you think we can do better? Sorry, I didn't tell you guys I was going to ask that question.
I'll just jump in here. Working at Walmart and also being a supplier to Walmart for many, many years, I saw, I'm using that as an example, I saw firsthand of how they are leveraging technology to not only keep track of the varying ways that the environmental and social impact is having and is making a difference. Not only for their company, not only for their customers, not only for their supplier and vendor community, but for the environment at large. And they don't only play in the domestic United States, they're in many, many different countries. And so that's just one microcosm example where they have a project called Project Gigaton, where they're literally tracking by vendor, by product, how much waste is being reduced, how much sustainability is being impacted in a positive way as a result of the efforts that they're making in terms of product packaging or efficiencies in how their truck routes, or what types of trucks and what types of fuel and autonomous vehicles. And there's so many different things that can impact both the environmental and social aspects of things. It's just I've seen it kind of on both sides. So like there's so much that is being done on the plus side.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, ESG is such a wild west right now, but it's the reality, and people are definitely starting to, and companies are definitely having to really commit to it, just because we've got a generation that cares about the future, that cares about social impact and about environmental impact. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I want to add to that, and this is coming from, I worked at Microsoft for 4 years. I recently resigned, and I know that, and I can speak from like what I know, because I know that Microsoft does a lot of things around AI for good, and that didn't start yesterday, right? It's been something that's been around for quite a while, and even tech for good generally. So while I was at Microsoft, I was building mixed reality on the cloud, and it's like, okay, how do we use this mixed reality technology to help people that are visually impaired do other things, live their lives as though they were not, but still be able to do all these things, because we're creating these technologies that aid them to function that way? Or how do we build AI for translating, across like different languages to help people communicate and reduce that communication barrier? Or how are we using AI to help people that are blind actually navigate certain rooms or certain spaces and things like that? How are we using technology in general to help people that have, one kind of to help people that are, what's the word, disabled in some way, be able to still function, right? I know that this is something that they do, and they've been doing for quite a while, and they have like partners, non-profits, different people, and I mean, at the end of the day, if we're not building technology to make the world better, so whether it's for good or even if it's for profits, but it has to have some kind of impact anyway, then what really is the point in the grand scheme of things, right? So I know that they do that, and like generally as well, like when we dig deep into the reasons why some companies exist, I mean, sometimes there's always like a deep mission behind that particular thing. I recently heard about a business in the UK that their goal is to use technology to connect SMEs who are supposed to be the backbone of the economy, but somehow they're the people in the economy that are the most forgotten, right? To connect these small, medium enterprises to funding through technology, right? So there are different things and there are different industries. Obviously, this question came as a shocker to me, so I'm not able to think to provide like many use cases. But the truth is, there are a bunch of use cases where people are using technology to drive positive change. I think we can do better because I think that there's still the interesting thing about technology is that it would solve a problem, and then somehow unknowingly it would create new problems. So there's always constantly something to be improved on, something to work on, something to change. So I don't think that we're there yet, but I think that technology is doing pretty great today at providing that sort of like impact across the board.
Yeah, I agree. You know, that whole conversation around the unintended consequences of tech, like AI, right? That whole unintended consequence, we think we're going to be efficientizing, but now we're also creating vast, disparities. We're not being able to think for ourselves. Data privacy, all of these things are becoming an issue, but it's becoming a cost of what we actually, of what we do. Do you have anything to comment, or should I? Yeah.
On the healthcare front,
Yeah.
as traditionally, healthcare specialists are located around heavily populated areas. So if you go out to small towns, they're not going to have access to subspecialists. So technology is able to expand upon the reach of those subspecialists. So if you're not focused on just large populated areas, like I live in Houston, nearing 3-4 million people, but you get out to the middle of nowhere, Texas, you're not going to have those type of that type of access to medical specialists. So I think technology is really great at this point, and that's something I invest in on the venture side, on how we improve access, how we make these technologies a force multiplier, a healthcare multiplier, so we can improve population outcomes on the healthcare front.
Thank you.
I kind of want to add to something he just said. So when you look at, like, I don't see technology as an industry. I don't think tech should be an industry. I think that tech is, I don't know if department is the word, but like, what? Well, I would also call it the backbone, but it's an accelerator across different industries. I'll put it like that. And that's because you talked about accessibility for healthcare. But if you look at technology as well, could help democratize a bunch of things in a bunch of industries. I know that now it's pretty easy for someone to pick up their phone and say, hey, I'm trying to invest in Tesla, or I want to buy stocks in, a bunch of all these companies. But there was a time where you couldn't do that if you were not going through some kind of, I think they're called stockbrokers, or, you have to do these things properly and go to, these banks and meet these people. And now it's like, it's pretty much in your reach. Technology as well has democratized education. Now there are a bunch of things, there are a bunch of people in tech, and even beyond tech, there are a bunch of like careers now that you can have where you don't have to go and get a full degree, because a 9-month diploma that you can do on your bed is enough to get you trained for the job. And all these things are able to happen because even like communication, like once upon a time, people sent letters across, and now it's like, so there's this thing called social media, and we've democratized how people talk to each other. So that's one thing that technology has done. and constantly keeps doing that, I think is, we may not think about it as impactful, because when we think social impact, we only want to think about, you know, the things that are non-profity. But the truth is, even the things that are businesses and make money at the end of the day are changing people's lives. So just wanted to add that too.
Thank you, Adora.
I want to let Logan say something,
Yes,
but I have to come back and comment on something.
I would
he
love
was
that,
saying.
yes.
Yeah, I believe more focused on renewable energy would be a big benefit. There's some newer technologies and ideas, some from like think tanks, some from companies that bring a lot of ingenuity to the table. If we can generate more power in a renewable energy sense that can lessen dependence on certain other areas and energy fields and sectors, it could bring about a revolution and change that benefits humanity. We could also have power, Wi-Fi power essentially, that would be accessible to people who are less fortunate and cannot typically access that power. So there are a lot of possibilities in the future, and that's what I'm looking forward to. So,
Great.
yeah.
Thanks, Logan, yeah.
So I have an experience here. For about 15 years, I was involved in a nonprofit organization that helped empower college and university students from around the world to help people in need, focusing on environmental, economic, and social impacts that they can make in their lives. And as Adora was sharing earlier, it sparked a memory. There was this one college student who came up with this project idea where, just quick poll, how many people have received a handwritten letter in the last year from anyone? Okay, I see like maybe about a half a dozen-ish hands, give or take. To your point, years ago, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was much more common, right? You can send an email, a text, a tweet, a social media comment, like, etc. It's not as common today. So what this girl did is she realized that there was a lot of women, she's based in the UK, there were a lot of women who, for whatever reason, were either underprivileged or weren't able to work a traditional type of job. But they had great penmanship. And she said, you know, let's use technology to bring companies that want to send handwritten letters and thank you notes to their customers and clients. Let's leverage technology to empower these people to actually handwrite these letters. And so she created a company whereby she's marketing to companies, you know, of varying different sizes, where they are sending handwritten letters and thank you notes to their customers and clientele. The impact socially and economically for these individuals who are handwriting letters was very positive. Obviously, the impact for, you know, the companies was beneficial, but they were leveraging technology to bridge that gap. And so it was just an example of leveraging technology to make a difference from a social standpoint. And I had to share that as you.
I love that. That was actually my next question. So Kyle, what is an example of a current project of yours that employs some sort of novel technology with a positive environmental and social impact? I'll ask that actually of the group.
Sure. So one of my projects, one of my focuses is global health. I've been fortunate enough to have worked in about 120 different countries on the clinical side. So right now I'm working on a project with a modular building that is light enough to be lifted by a pitchfork, so very light, but can also be dropped in via drone. It's self-sustaining, so it has its own power, water, sewage system, so it literally can be dropped in places with pretty poor infrastructure traditionally, and be working instantaneously. So we're working in a few countries, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Grenada, Costa Rica, right now, to set up satellite clinics that are self-sustained, modular, so that we can continue to build either outwards or upwards. And a lot of these places are impacted by hurricanes, so the traditional infrastructure goes down every single year. We see that in Puerto Rico and other places as well. So that is now a moot point. These are self-sustained. So we're able to provide healthcare access to these traditionally poorly accessed locations, as well as do it in a way that is sustainable. So that's a cool project that we're working on.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, all of those, I don't know what percentage of containers are out there that are just being unused, and the fact that you can make them modular and do all that, that's amazing. And so minimal, right? Such little investment. Logan, how about you?
So actually a project that are going on right now, actually a blueprint of it. So this is a more simplistic design. Of course, does not represent exactly what we're working on, but a few engineers I'm working with, and I'm quite sure you can see all this, but essentially the combination of a wind turbine with solar power and kinetic-based buoy operation within the ocean, for example, can produce quite a lot of power. And this power can be used to benefit, of course, society and humanity. So this is probably a core aspect of how my company is trying to help leverage technology to benefit humanity. This would be the main project we're currently focused on. It's more of in a prototype concept phase. We've have all the math backing it up, all the engineers backing it up, and there's been some interest in actually developing it. So that would be my hopeful contribution in the near future.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Did you want to share any, Dora? Do you have one?
Yes, I can share something. So my nonprofit primarily is connecting people to opportunities that help them start and scale their tech careers, right? And this is something that we're doing, started in Nigeria, but now trying to set up chapters across Africa. And in Nigeria, one thing that we've noticed is, yes, we're connecting people to these jobs, to these opportunities that help them build. Some people are lucky, they have, the education, they have the devices. What they just don't have is the experience, and we're connecting them to that. A lot of people don't have access to the technologies that even help them build on technology. So for example, you want to be a front-end engineer, but somehow you don't have a laptop. How do you learn, right? How do you build? How do you actually get to a point where you do things and you continue to upskill and also build projects that now allow companies notice you and hire you? So we started this thing called a laptop sharing initiative, and the goal is when you have like many people in the hundreds of thousands that need a resource and you're not really well funded, because a bunch of things are done via partnerships. Some things are, sometimes funding comes in, sometimes it doesn't really come in. So we're operating on trying to have like the maximum results with like little, access to funds that we have. So when you're not able to buy computers for like hundreds of thousands of people, what do? You buy a few computers and you leverage partnerships to help those computers reach people. So we started these partnerships with hubs across the country, in different parts of the country. So a hub could have like 10 to 20 computers, and if you're a community member and you live around those hubs, you can walk into those hubs and you can use those computers when you maybe learning and there's like tasks that you need to complete that you can't just do on your phone from your house, or when you have an interview and things like that, right? You're able to walk into those hubs and use those things. But then that's a social thing. Now, where technology is helping us here is the fact that, let's say a hub has 25 laptops and somehow 80 people want to go into those hubs to use those computers. What happens, right? So in the community, a bunch of engineers built an asset management system, right? And what this does is that the hubs are able to manage the assets they have, saying, okay, we have 20 computers, 10 of them are booked, 10 of them are available, and people can book computers on certain days, and that whole process is sort of automated and managed so that that possibility of that whole supply chain problem that could have existed is something that technology is solving for us, and it's just making it easy for people to decide when to come or not come to the hubs that are close to them. Or, okay, for example, I tried this hub in this area and it doesn't work, but there's another hub closer to me that NexaScale also has laptops. I'll go book there instead. And it just reduces the stress, right? So, and that's why I was talking about technology being an accelerator, because this is very much a social problem. It's like, okay, we're giving people laptops. We're helping 5 people share one laptop at different times. But it's like, how do we use technology to make sure that their schedules don't clash? How do we use technology to make sure that the experience is seamless overall? And that's one thing that within the non-profits we're doing today.
I just have a clarifying question. Do they have to book those slots online?
Yeah, they have to book those laptops online before they go in to use them.
Because if they can't get to the laptop to book it to the slide, I don't know how that works. But
You'd be surprised at how many people have smartphones.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
many
Just kidding,
people have
just kidding.
smartphones. Laptops are what's crazy.
There are more people who have cell phones in Africa than toilets. And that's my background, that's what I know. And I'm working in sub-Saharan Africa as well. And we have these, and there is this, so one of the ways in which we approach technology, we work in a sector, I wouldn't call it a sector, but we focus on what's called appropriate technology. And appropriate technology is technology that can be built locally, that doesn't need any kind of importing, it's durable, it's effective, and it can be maintained locally. So you don't need outside or external organizations or people to manage it. And one of the criteria that I have when introducing these kinds of technologies to teach the women that we're working with in sub-Saharan Africa is that, can women build it? And because oftentimes the technology is only the entry point for leadership building. Because what you are doing there is, if you can get a technology that people can learn how to build locally, then you're reducing costs in that they don't have to get external parts. You're reducing labor because you're building it locally. You are using local materials, so you're not damaging the environment in any way. And so, how do you design technologies in a way that it is benefiting both social and environmental? And in the case of the technology I was just talking about, it's called the biosound filter. It's a water filter that can treat water anywhere in the world, and it can be made out of local materials. Everyone has cement, everyone has rocks, everyone has sand. When it was first designed, it was this flashy plastic thing, and they were going to send it all around the world to save everybody who didn't have access to water and sanitation. But that was that was not a sustainable model at all. Yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. How much transportation, environmental damage, everything. When literally all they need to do is build it locally. So how do you come up with those kinds of technologies that are going to be useful in those kinds of scenarios, so that it's not this giveaway, but it's this opportunity for empowerment of the community. I have a little problem with the word empowerment. Empowerment implies the transfer of power when people who live in these communities actually have the power within themselves and around themselves, that they can actually do it on their own with just some resources. So on that, where are some of the areas that you're a little worried about technology, and where technology is going, and maybe we can be even more specific about internet or not hardware stuff. Where do you kind of see some roadblocks, some places we need to have a little bit of concern as we move forward in trying to maximize technology for everything, basically?
I would say security. So security is the one thing that I'll talk about there. And I know that yes, we have these there's compliance requirements when you're thinking about data security, data protection, depending on where you are. I know that the EU is very big on GDPR. California has their CCPA thing going on. Nigeria has NDPR, which is very similar to the way GDPR operates. And there's these different compliance regulations, and if you are building things that people in these sort of geo zones are supposed to be using, you have to be compliant when you deploy whatever applications that exist, in these zones. But the truth is, there's still a lot, because when you think of security, yes, when we're thinking about cybersecurity and why that's a risk, it's in the context of technology. Cybersecurity exists because, rather, cyber attackers exist because technology exists, right? And I know that, yes, we talk about different cybersecurity measures, doing things proactively and also reactively when some things happen, and you know, in the context of like security, there's actual security and then there's safety, and like we talk about all these things generally. But the truth is, there's also social engineering, which is something that you can still sort of ties back into technology, but you can't really control because you can't stop human beings from being human beings. And as long as human beings are the ones using technology, we're always going to have these issues. So, I can't talk about, or rather, I can't sort of like suggest a way to solve this problem in the context of security, because even if I say, okay, let's have more stringent laws for privacy, let's train more people, let's do all of that, people are going to do it, but then there's also the social bit, which is also a very important thing. But in the context of my worries, it's actually security. It's not AI. I know that many people might think, oh, AI is, you know, AI is the worry, AI is coming to take your job. I don't think AI is coming to take jobs. I think that many people will lose jobs as a result of AI, yes, but it's not coming to take jobs, it's coming to evolve the industry. So if maybe a job, and this is something that has happened over decades. When Netflix started, Netflix was renting out videos. And today, it's a streaming platform. So what happened to those people that were in the offices renting out the videos working at Netflix? They lost those jobs and they're probably doing something else now. So it will take your job, but like I talked about technology, it solves a problem to create like 5 new problems. So it will take your job and then give you 5 new kinds of career options that you can build a career in if you are interested. So AI isn't actually what bothers me. I think it's the security bit, because there's the human side to it. And as much as there are many things that can be put into place, and policies and regulations and sanctions and lawsuits and things like that, you ultimately can't really control how human beings behave sometimes. So.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I think there's a great power to AI, and I think that the main key aspect to focus on is the direction that we put that emphasis on. Of course, people have offensive purposes for it, they have defensive, and in between. I think it's very important that we designate the categories that we want to focus on so that it can progress in a way that benefits humanity and not in a way that's too offensive or focuses on one side versus the other.
I'm trying to remember what ChatGPT told me to say for this.
Some of these questions I got from ChatGPT, by the way.
No, but in all seriousness, for me, I think it's speaking about the humanity side.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV, but just anecdotally, I see the difference between some of my kids who, my older kids, were more involved in using technology from a younger age. My younger kids, less so, because my wife and I have been more intentional about that. And so I see my kids playing outside more and playing with Legos or blocks or magnet tiles or whatever the case might be. And so just seeing the social impact personally between using more versus using less. I'm not saying or suggesting that we shouldn't use technology. Obviously it's going to be there. The question is, what are we using it for, right? It's just a set of tools. At the core, it either, you know, to what Logan was saying before, it can help enable things efficiently. It can also be a detractor, but it's like any tool or a series of tools. It's how you use it and what you're using it for. So I think it's like recognizing the impact, but because the acceleration of, and the pace with which technology continues to evolve, I think that the biggest unknown is what the actual impact on the humanity side is, and we don't have enough data, and we have some, but we don't have enough over a long enough period of time to really understand what that impact is yet.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll ask ChatGPT that one.
So Kyle, you're in the healthcare, sector. That's where I probably worry about it the most. Where is it?
I see so much potential there as far as I have doctor friends that say, oh, we're going to, AI is going to diagnose, and AI can help you diagnose, but AI itself cannot diagnose a doctor or provide a test to diagnose, but it can be a tool to help you do that. My concern is that when you bring in these diagnosis augmenters or tools, we need to understand where their training tool set is from. If you're not engaging or training your AI from the correct population, then the outcome is going to be, CREP. So what goes in comes out. So we need to make sure, and that even happened before technology. Like going back to, 20 years ago, we based our, like when I was being trained 20 years ago in medicine, how I was trained to treat hypertension and hyperlipidemia was based on studies like the Framingham study, which is this itty bitty, pretty much 99% white town in Connecticut. But now we have to apply this to every one of you out there. Does every one of you look like the 99% white people in Connecticut? No. So how does that apply? That's the question, right? So it applies to that population, but doesn't apply to everyone else in the world necessarily. So we need to take that lesson from pre-AI, and then as we're training our AI, ensure that we're including all the population so that we can make sure that the outcome is accurate and worthwhile.
Yeah, so now you're going even further back into the design. Who is designing? Whose perspectives are actually contributing to the design of these technologies that are supposed to help us be more efficient, to be able to diagnose things? And so there's some really, really huge ethical questions around that, and determining, and who's making those decisions, who's making the hiring decisions, who's making the decisions around how those teams are built, who's determining what parameters that we're creating, and criteria we're establishing in order for us to create these, and sometimes we just don't know what we don't know, right? And that's where the big kind of fear is. So I'm gonna stop taking us down a really very bad dark hole, and I'm gonna I'm gonna stop asking ChatGPT questions and actually ask you all if you have any questions for our panel. Open it up to the audience. Yes.
Is there a mic?
Yeah, is there a mic for someone? Do we have a mic for the?
Sorry, this was addressed. I was listening.
Okay.
Right?
We won't test you.
Because there was a lot of good information, but environmental, in the sense, I'm really interested in. Can you speak a little bit about how global warming is being, addressed, either directly or indirectly? How Bill Gates speaks about it, that something in that area. Just touch base on it.
So the question is, how are you saying leveraging technology around the reduction of global warming? Yeah, reduction of global warming. Wow, anyone have that expertise? I can't speak to that at all.
I can say something, just a little bit. So when we think about data centers, right, it's like we're using technology, we're creating fantastic solutions, but then there's carbon emission, and that's not nice, even if I'm smiling. But then I think that a lot of cloud providers and people that own data centers are beginning to see why this is a problem and address it. And for example, databases emit a lot of carbon, right?
Just
A lot.
websites alone, yeah.
Just the databases, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about all the other hardware infrastructure that exists in the data centers. And so being able to, and this sort of comes back to the hardware that is being used to build out the sort of those supercomputers, as well as optimizing the code that is written on those computers as well, because sometimes something running for longer than it needs to, for example, we might not see the effects if you maybe write code, or maybe somebody calls an API. I'm trying not to use really technical terms here. Somebody writes something in a website that is supposed to run for 3 seconds and runs for 8 seconds. It's not a big deal because the difference is just 5 seconds, right? So it's okay, 5 more seconds, it ran and whatever carbon emission that we're talking about, and that's just 5 seconds. But when you have systems that scale and people are making 1 million calls to that same computer, or rather to that same process instance, and you're having 1 million 8 seconds as opposed to 1 million 3 seconds. Now the difference is 5 million seconds, which is a lot. And if this is a process that happens multiple times in a day, just think about how much carbon is getting emitted, right? And I know that this is something that a bunch of companies, cloud providers are beginning to think about. I don't know so much about hardware to speak, deeply into this conversation, but I know that this is something that is currently like happening, and you hear even within these companies, like these big companies, they have sustainability teams and they're talking about how they plan to reduce their carbon emission by whatever percent by 2030. So this is like something that many people are thinking about, and it's really top of mind. That I know. How is what I can't speak because I don't, work in that space.
Well, I'd like to also just share, as you were sharing that, it reminds me of a story. I know I keep going back to Walmart, but I think it was in 2000 that the then CEO, Lee Scott at the time, made the commitment to focus on sustainability as a corporate initiative, which 24 years ago wasn't a popular topic of conversation, and people were like, what are they doing? But they've really led a lot of those initiatives because of their scale and because of the impact that those 5 seconds, so to speak, for everything that they do or don't do. And I don't remember the exact year, but I think that they're planning to be carbon neutral within the next 10 or 15 years. I don't remember the exact time frame, but that's amazing. It's amazing, because they have over 11,000 physical store locations globally. They did $611 billion in revenue last year, so that's kind of a lot. It's a Fortune 1 for a reason. But I just want to share this story because this was so interesting just to show the impact. Early 2000s, this question had come up to a number of store associates there, and they said, well, what kind of impact can we make at the store level? And there was an hourly associate who came to their manager after that meeting and said, we had this meeting in the break room, in the associate break room. Customers never see this break room. It's just where the associates go to have a break, have a snack, lunch, coffee, breakfast, whatever the case might be. And there were, a smattering of vending machines in that break room, soda machines, snack machines. And so this associate said to the manager, I don't know how much of a difference this will make, but do we really need the lights behind the logo of the front of the vending machine to be on? We don't really need it. Like, we could still use the machine if the lights are off. So why don't we just unscrew the bulbs for the 4 or 5 vending machines that are in the store? It won't really make a difference in our lives. It doesn't affect the customers in any way. Let's try it. It's a great idea. They did that. The store manager told that to the district manager, and it kind of went up the chain. They ended up making a policy that they're going to unscrew all the bulbs in all the associate break rooms across all the stores, and it saved millions and millions of dollars on electricity because it was frankly wasted. And one hourly associate had this idea to environmentally impact, the unnecessary use of electricity just from sitting there like, oh, why don't we just unscrew the bulb? Like, it could be as simple as that.
So,
Thinking of the very similar things, like how many people shut down their computer when they go home?
yeah.
How many people turn off the light in the conference room?
Yeah.
Just, it's not my job, whatever.
Yeah. I was just at COP28, the UN Climate Change Conference and this year it was in Dubai. And one of the big initiatives they're doing right now is making what's called a just transition. It's making that transition so that anybody who's being affected by climate change and the reduction of it it's going to be fair across the board. It's not going to affect just the rich countries who can afford it, right? And they started what's called this loss and damage fund. The loss and damage fund is to be able to sort of the reparations for nations and communities that have been the first climate change refugees and trying to rebuild. And you see this data going around, and you see how important it is, and they talk about this just transition. But meanwhile, only $700 million of that money has been raised from these other countries. We're still trying to deal with the whole oil and gas. We're trying to, everyone's still trying to figure all that stuff out. They're thinking so big that we're starting to lose It's still not a just transition when you have the people who are the first climate change refugees not having a home because their islands are underwater. So there's definitely some climate change tech that we could absolutely use in cases like this. Yes.
When we look at the technologies that we're applying, there are, yes, climate change is extremely important. It's driving people a lot. One of the uncited facts is that there's tremendous attention here in the United States about the immigration which is coming from Central America. A lot of that is driven by climate change in El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Central American countries. But here in the United States, some of the use of our technology is driving negative environmental impacts. We have how much of the products that we're talking about deploying are based on plastics, when the cancer rates in Louisiana between Baton Rouge and Shreveport are 9 times the national average because of plastic production. We have plants that are emitting particulate matter 2.5, largely in underserved areas, which are causing asthma, lung cancer, GI cancer, breast cancer, and unless we deal with those in the way we're producing the technology that we're deploying, we're making the problem worse.
Exactly. Unintended consequences of tech. Yes, sir. I think with this, we have time for, yeah.
We have just like a couple
seconds left, so.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Emil, and I'm the founder of Belto, where we are working towards something regarding this topic, because we are building a data collection tool specifically for ESG data. So my question is, what do you think of the upcoming ESG regulations? What do you think, or what are good tips for us to succeed in that area?
Anyone? I have plenty of thoughts, but I'm taking up too much space. Does anyone else want to answer that?
I'm going to give more of a general answer on this, but it's more perhaps thought-provoking. We all know that what gets measured gets done, right? And so the more we're starting to measure and track data around ESG and other things that are important, not only to us individually or at a company level or at a national level or at a global level, but the more we pay attention to these things, the more we can impact them for the better. But I think for a long time, part of the issue was we weren't even paying attention. And now we're paying more attention, and so we're making, I think, collectively, more of an impact and change.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, ESG right now is such a wild west. It's like whoever is designing these things are kind of determining what should be measured. And I think what could be beneficial is just finding some standards that can be agreed upon, that can be like monitored and checked against, because especially now that they have, oh gosh, what is it? Is it 2 degrees? The increase in temperature, if it increases by a certain amount, I think it's like 2 degrees or something, then we're in real danger, right? Of going past the point of no return. And so now that we have that sort of gauge, how can we check our environmental impacts against that gauge so it doesn't increase it beyond that cap? Because that was one of the big conversations during COP28 was, there were 2 times last year that we exceeded that cap. And so what does that mean? Does that mean we have just passed the point of no return? How long can we be past that cap in order for us to, and be able to come back from it? So that kind of data is now out there. So how can we start standardizing it against that cap so that we don't exceed it? So that's just information that I was able to gather at COP28, but knowing what I know of, because I teach social entrepreneurship. I used to teach it at Stanford, and then I just finished teaching it at a small liberal arts college in Southern California. And right now, everybody is learning about these what they should be tracking in terms of their operations, because so many companies operate with such different ways. Their suppliers, their supply chain, their demand chain, all of that, they're all very, very different. So how are you going to standardize something that is going to show that they are making market differences so that they are not creating more damage? So that's just my thought. I'm not an expert.
Thank you, leaders.